Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Must See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. We've got in the house tonight. We've got Bryce from Bryce Talks Metal. We've got Ralph, Count Ralphus himself. We've got Chris Allo and Karen La Preziosa.
Hey, how are you?
We've got a fun show tonight. This is a kind of something I've been wanting to do for a long time. We've actually had a lot of people ask for this topic on various shows across the channel, especially on In the Prog Seat, but I thought it'd be really cool here to do on Hudson Valley Squares as well. This whole concept of sounds like this. Bands we like because they sound a lot like a band that we really love, a more known band that we've loved for a long time. But this newer band, I'll say newer, they don't have to be a new band, but this other band that kind of came around and maybe they were greatly influenced by that other band we really love a lot, or maybe not, but they kind of sound and remind us of that other band. And that's the reason why we dig them. There's lots of people, and I'm not going to get into specifics here because we'll each talk about it on all of our picks, but we've each picked out three bands that we really like because they kind of sound like another band that we really love. So Karen's going to kick us off with her first selection of the day.
Are we doing one each?
Yeah, one each, and we'll go through three times. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go with Church of Misery. They're doom metal, and of course, that's all Iomi worship, really. But Church of Misery, there's something specific about them. They have a little bit of that psychedelic touch to them. Not much, but it's there, of early Sabbath. They use a lot of Sabbath imagery. They use the Vertigo record label logo a lot. They use the angel with wings that's being cast out. They've used, what's the name of that? Master of Brutality is one of their albums. Volume 1, Born Too Late, which is like Born Again with a black and white baby image as opposed to the other. So, I mean, they lean heavy on Sabbath, but I love it. It's like an homage, and whereas you get a band like Orchid, they really offend me. They sound so much like Black Sabbath. It's offensive to me, but something about Church of Misery, I find it charming and I like it a lot. So Church of Misery is going to be my first pick with Black Sabbath.
Cool. Ralph, what do you got? First choice.
All right. So I didn't have much time to think about it. And when I first thought about it right away, I came up with one. And then I started thinking about so many other bands, but it was more bands that reminded me of other bands, but they didn't necessarily like really sound like them. So I tried to avoid that and went with more of the bands that sound like other bands. And this band, it's been around for a long time. They put out their first album in like 99. But at the time they put the album out, the band that they sounded like had changed their sound kind of drastically. And the band that I'm talking about is Carcass, and this band, Aborted, is the band that like pretty much like jumped into that sound, kind of filled a void at the time for me. At first, it was like Carcass worship, but it was really good. They did a really good justice to it. And I was thinking about that too. There was a lot of bands that had stopped with a sound, and then another band kind of came in and filled the void. So my first choice will be Aborted.
And a good choice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Bryce.
Cool. So my first choice, I'm going to go with the band Fallen Angel. It is a classic era thrash band, not a super well-known band, but they sound really similar to Testament. They've got one full-length album that came out in 1992 called Faith Fails. They just really have that early Testament sound, really great production, really great guitar work and riffs. Some of the, solos, very technical, some nice sweep picking going on. Remind me a lot of Skolnick. But yeah, it's unfortunate that they weren't around longer. I've ranked this as like my favorite underrated thrash album in the past. A lot of great stuff on it. So I would definitely recommend to check it out if you like classic era Testament. Fallen Angel, just the one album, Faith Fails.
Awesome. What year was that again, Bryce?
92. They were together from 87 to 92 from Sweden.
Cool.
So
Sweden.
Yeah.
So many great
A lot of
bands.
good stuff comes out of there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Chris,
yeah.
what do you got?
All right, mine. This was the very first band I thought of when you mentioned this topic, Pete. In the '80s, I was a huge thrash fan, but I was also surprise, surprise. Spoiler alert: I was a huge Black Sabbath fan. When I was a kid, and but like everything was fucking thrash. If it was cool, it was thrash.
Yeah.
But in like '87, I guess, not right when this first came out, but a little bit later, somebody had told me about this really cool band that was like playing like Black Sabbath style doom, and it was Candlemass
Candlemass,
from
yes,
Sweden.
yes.
This is the first one I got was Epicus Doomicus Metallicus, not the CD though. I have the original vinyl somewhere, which I think I'm going to sell on eBay because I don't really need it anymore. But yeah, I became a huge fan of this band, and they're awesome. I mean, they do. They do their own thing, but they definitely have their roots firmly planted in Sabbath worship. And I think it was I can't even remember one of the albums. Was it Ancient Dreams? They did like a really cool Sabbath medley
Ancient Dreams.
of like five or six
Wow.
pieces of Sabbath songs smashed together. And I know I saw them on their first U.S. run, which maybe it was for I think it was for Ancient Dreams, and I remember they did that live. But they're still going. I mean, me and Craig from Craig Kaminsky saw them in Philadelphia at their Decibel Beer Festival back in June. So yeah, they're still going strong. God bless them. So yeah, that's my first pick, Candlemass.
Naomi plays on the last album.
Yes, right. The Octopus song. I forget the title, but some Octopus.
I was thinking of mentioning them. They were one of the first bands that came to mind, but then I was like, that's. I just thought it was going to be mentioned already.
Yeah, that was the very, very first one I thought of.
The whole genre of music.
Oh, for sure. I mean, listen, I like every band has taken influence from Sabbath some way.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I'm going to ask you in about 3 months. I'm going to be like, so have you sold that LP that you were talking about?
Pete, I swear I'm going to do it.
Don't do it. Don't.
Karen, I got so much stuff. I gotta have a fire sale. I gotta get rid of shit.
I hear you. I know.
Pete knows. He's seen it.
I believe you. I do.
It's in your firsthand. All right. Well, this band offends Karen, but I really dig them a lot. I'm going to go with Orchid.
Orchid.
Yeah. It's from San Francisco. Again, so we got 3 of us picked bands that remind us of Sabbath. There's a lot of really great bands that remind us of Sabbath that were heavily influenced by Sabbath. These guys came out, they only released a couple of albums and EPs, and then bloop, they were gone. I heard rumblings that they were getting back together, or they are back together. I'm not quite sure what's going on with them, but again, the big, heavy, slow riffing, the singer's got this kind of higher pitched, like Ozzy thing going on. They got lots of attitude, heavy songs. I really liked them a lot when they first came out. I know some people complain they try to sound too much like classic early Sabbath, but I don't care. I dig them quite a bit. And I miss them. I wish they had, I hope they are back, and I hope they do release something new. But really cool band. Orchid only have a couple releases, but check them out if you're a Sabbath nut. So back to Karen.
Okay, my second band is I'm going to stick with I'm going to go to garage punk a little bit. I noticed some people like the Mummies, so I thought this one would be okay. There's a garage punk band called The Makers, and they are like the Sonics, like a twin, like a mirror. Both of them are from Washington, and the Makers they wear their little suits like the Sonics, and the sunglasses and the hair, and it's lo-fi, it's primitive, aggressive. It has that snotty attitude. And yeah, this was all happening in the 60s. Have love will travel, baby. I mean, the Makers are just awesome. And as they kind of went along and made more records, they started to kind of change and get a bit more psychedelic and go with like Question Mark and the Mysterians kind of thing. And I love it. I was so there for that, and I really do miss them. And yeah, so again, garage, 60s garage is I'm going to say the Makers and the Sonics.
Lo-fi, that's a word we don't hear often enough.
I know
No,
you're the prog guy. I know. It's like I that's why I questioned it, like if I should mention it. But it's just such a type of music I really love. It's just such good party music, feel good music, kind of aggressive, but I don't know. It's
There
neat.
you go.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, back to Ralph.
All right, so this band, they just played down in Brooklyn. Everybody pretty much went to it. I always say, like, if Motorhead and Venom had a baby, it would be Midnight. And but they definitely more on the Venom side, but like some hints of Motorhead. But yeah, I had to go with they were the first band I thought of. Like I love the way they sound more like Venom today than Venom sounds to me.
They were
I
really
would
good.
100% agree, Ralph. I got to tell you.
Yeah.
And I seen them twice before. I seen them just this year again. They opened up for Mayhem, and I seen them, probably Chris was there too, as we seen them with Sam Hain years ago.
Yep.
And you know, I really wanted to catch them. We left early. We figured we had 3 hours to get there the other night. Getting over to George Washington Bridge took like an hour. And then finding parking and shit down in Brooklyn, it was a nightmare, and we ended up missing them. But I can't wait to catch them when they do a full headline run. I got to see them do a headline because they got a lot of albums now. They got a lot of great songs, and they're my number 2.
Where are they from?
I interviewed the singer when Midnight to Mercy or whatever the hell that record was called, and he's from Ohio. I think it's
they're American.
Cleveland. I can't remember his name. Super nice guy. And it's funny, like I agree with Ralph so much. I was like, dude, you guys are like total Venom worship. And he was like, yeah, you know, a little bit, but all this band and that band. And I'm like, all right,
No, a lot of
well,
bands.
listen, I see it. That you don't see it, you know. It's like somebody calling me fat. And I'm like, no. Yeah, no, dude, yeah. But yeah, he didn't want to fess up to it, which is cool. Whatever. But yeah, I think they're a very cool band. I seen them once open for Abbott and Obituary. And I seen him once with Sam Hain, and I think that might have been it. Yeah, and Pete and I, it took us almost 4 hours to drive to.
We figured out 4 hours. We got plenty of time. We'll
Yeah.
catch all the bands. We'll have time
Oh
to
my
have a
God.
beer and something to eat. Yeah, no, forget it.
Oh, yeah.
Did not work out that way.
Yeah,
The
Midnight-
drummer's in the band Ringworm.
Say again, Ralph?
The drummer also plays in the band Ringworm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're very cool. But yeah, Midnight are one of those bands, man. Like I remember saying to the singer, sorry, I can't remember his name, but I'm like, wow, like, you know, Metal Blade really blew up with Ghost and Amon Amarth. I'm like, I see no reason why, you know, Metal Blade can't put that marketing team behind Midnight and turn that into something huge. Unfortunately, just hasn't seemed to happen yet for them.
I
But
think this tour is going to do it for them, and they've been on a lot of great tours already. But I think this tour is going to put them on the map more. You know,
it's gotta, yeah. I mean,
Well, they're playing in
is
front of thousands of people every night.
Yeah.
Every night.
Yeah,
for sure.
we'll see. We'll see. All right, Bryce, back to you.
All right. My second choice, I'm going to go with the band Midnight Priest, a band from Portugal that sounds very, very similar to King Diamond and Merciful Fate. The singer, Lex Thunder is his name. He's got like an 80s glam metal name, but he sings the King Diamond stuff really well, like hits the very high notes that King does the mid-range, like he's telling a horror story within there. Specifically the album Aggressive Hauntings from 2019, even from the album artwork. I unfortunately don't have it, but anybody can check that out and you see it's gonna, you know, sound like King Diamond. And just some epic stuff. The singer actually did unfortunately leave the band recently, so don't know what they're going to be doing too much going forward. But that album, if you like classic King Diamond and Merciful Fate, check it out. Midnight Priest, Aggressive Hauntings.
They'll probably find another singer who can hit those King Diamond highs.
Yeah,
right?
probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just about everybody at King Theater thought they were hitting those King Diamond highs. It was
Especially
awful,
the
but
drunk guy behind
beautiful.
me.
Jeez.
And I'll bet Rich Catino was probably doing it too while he was wearing a Slaughter shirt, right?
Yeah.
We were giving Rich a little bit of shit the other night.
He really wore a Slaughter shirt.
He did.
Oh, for sure.
Nice.
My friend wore an Elton John shirt.
Hey, it's
Levy.
nice.
All right, it is what it is, right?
All right, Chris. back
Funny
to you.
shit. All right, mine. I'm not the biggest power metal fan myself personally, but I was familiar with the band Sinner. But I'm a huge Judas Priest fan, and this guy, the bassist and singer Matt Sinner, formed this somewhat power metal band called Primal Fear with vocalist Ralph Sheepers, and man, to me, that band is just a dead ringer for Judas Priest, and they first came on my radar because I had heard how Ralph Sheepers was in the running to replace Rob Halford for Judas Priest in the 90s. And I did interview Ralph Sheepers, and I asked him, and he was like, oh yeah, that's, he's like, I was close. I didn't get the gig. And then, things, he gave me the old, things worked out for the better. And I'm like, oh no, of course. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here, man. Who wouldn't want to be in Judas Priest? But that's cool. That's cool. Let's go with that. But I still really like Primal Fear. Seen them a ton of times. I think they're very cool. And yeah, they definitely have a lot of similarity to Judas Priest, which I think is fun.
Which era of Judas Priest?
Painkiller.
Yeah, definitely. Painkiller.
Their best album.
Yeah.
He looks like if Rob Halford worked out all the time. He's a big dude. I've seen them a couple of times, and
He's a big dude.
Them, but I never bought anything by them. But they definitely, when I seen them, I thought they sounded so much like Priest.
Yeah, and I remember one time, I want to say this was like that really weird tour that Halford did that was a great bill, but nobody went. It was like Rob Halford, Testament, and Immortal, and then like a bunch of other bands underneath. And Primal Fear was one of the underneath bands, and he came out, and because he's such a big dude, he had a cut off shirt, his muscles on top of muscles. He was in the crowd watching Halford, but like he just stuck out like a sore thumb. All these skinny, scrawny kids in black T-shirts and this big German muscle guys watching Rob Halford.
I still have a full ticket stub for that when they were supposed to come to the Chance, and then they can't.
Oh, that's right.
I know you caught the early show, and then
I just lucked out. They did 2 nights at BB King's, and then like a week or two later, they were supposed to do the Chance. Me and Frank White went to the first night of BB King's, and we were like, yeah, tour's been pulled. This is the last night. That's it. Everybody's going home. We were like, what? This is such a great tour. How is this possible? But don't know what happened, but something happened bad.
The 90s were weird.
Tickets is what I heard.
Yeah, great band live. I have all their albums.
Yeah,
it was really good. I was thinking about them for this because they totally fit. And I totally forgot. Rob sent me his picks as well. So let me read Rob's first 2 picks. His first one was also Primal Fear. Remind him of Judas Priest. The other pick is the band Novaria, who reminds him of the power metal band DGM. So those are his first 2. So I'll circle back on his third one next go around. All right. So my next pick is an Italian band who I believe this is their only album. They're also a Uriah Heep tribute band, and they decided to do an album of all original material. The band is Blind Golem. All right. The album is called A Dream of Fantasy, and they sound just like Uriah Heep circa 1971-72. In fact, the late Ken Hensley, former keyboard player from Uriah Heep, also plays on, I think, 2 tracks on here.
Wow.
And it's great artwork. I mean, look at that,
Yeah.
Cool stuff. Big guitar riffs, loads of Hammond organ, great vocals, heavy kind of proggy songs. But it's if you didn't know any better, you'd be like, is that like a long lost recording from Uriah Heep circa 1971 or 72 or something like that? Great band. Blind Golem. If you love classic Uriah Heep, you will love these guys. Awesome stuff.
I'm going to check them out. Do they sing in Italian at all?
Nope, English.
Oh, okay. I know a lot of Italian bands like to sing in Italian here.
I know, and a lot of times I like the Italian bands to sing in their own language.
Yeah,
but,
me too.
They don't here, but it's really great stuff. Really good stuff. Yeah, check it out.
I like that.
All right, Karen, back to you.
Okay. My next band is Brian Jonestown Massacre. They are a psychedelic band, leans heavy on the 60s. A myriad of 60s influences, obviously. Brian Jonestown Massacre, the name. Their album, they have one album called Their Satanic Majesty's Second Request. They have a guitar player who kind of looks and sings a little bit like John Lennon, sounds like John Lennon. They sing with English accents, but and they're from Huntington Beach, okay. But in spite of all these influences, you hear Jefferson Airplane, you hear 13th Floor Elevators, all that kind of psychedelic stuff. I'm going to say when I hear them, I think of the Byrds the most because Roger McGuinn, his 12-string Rickenbacker is still reaching into music these days. And you hear it all over in Brian Jonestown Massacre, especially on their Satanic Majesty Second Request. It just doesn't stop. It's a constant. Even though you hear all these other influences, that 12-string Rick is still there, still jangly, always jangly. And yeah, the Byrds are a huge influence, and we still feel them today. I mean, it might not be like pop music, but there's a lot of live music, a lot of live psych bands that are still channeling Roger McGuinn.
A lot of indie bands have been doing that
Yeah.
for years. Yes. And you know, look at a guy like Tom Petty, right? Who
Absolutely.
huge. I mean, he was hugely influenced by the
Big
Byrds.
time.
Yeah.
Big time. Yeah. And that's just classic rock radio. But I mean, there's bands like the Black Angels, the Warlocks, all those guys. The psych bands, they still use that a lot. So and I love psych. I do. It's my fave.
Psych is cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm gonna say Brian Jonestown Massacre. And they make music. They release 2 albums a year sometimes, and everything is free. They've been going since the 90s. I highly recommend just checking them out. Everything is free. You don't have to buy anything if you don't want to, but that's for sale too. But he always releases it free, Anton Newcomb. So
cool.
My recommendation.
All right, Ralph, back to you. Ralph, I always love Ralph's camera angle. It makes Ralph look like he's like 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
I always want the shirt to be shown. It bothers me when I can't see Karen's shirt. I can always see the top of Chris's shirt usually, and I only see like the logo top. So I always try to have it so I can see the shirt. But
that's a good thing. And that's a mighty Hellhammer shirt you got there. Very cool.
This is for the Mummies fans that left comments. This is the Mummy shirt.
There you go. Karen wore that just for all of you.
All 2 of you.
The Hellhammer shirt goes inside with what I'm about to say. But so in 1990, I think it was, I went down to the Sundance in Long Island. It was Suffocation, Sadist, and Death. But there was an opening band that we never heard of, and this is way before YouTube, so you just go there and check it out. We figured it's going to be another blasting, brutal band, We get there, and this band comes on. They're from New York. They formed in 1988, and they start playing this real slow, sludgy, doomy music, and we kept waiting for it to like kick in. We thought it was like an intro, but every song they did was like that, and it just never really picked up. We were like cracking up while we were watching it, me and my friends. But then afterwards, one of us got the CD, and we were like, "Man, this fucking kills." The band is Winter.
Yes.
Oh wow, I remember them. Yeah.
Yes.
They reminded me so much of Hellhammer. Here's my autograph, Martin Ain, Tom Warrior, copy of the vinyl. But yeah, I've always loved it. I still go back to it every now and again. They only did like the full length in the EP, but they reformed like 8 years ago or so, and they played a festival, and I think they still play shows once in a blue moon. But I'd love to see them again because I love them. That's it, Winter.
Got all about those guys. Wow.
Yeah, wow, that's great.
All right, Bryce.
Okay, so my last pick, I'm gonna go with Hell Ripper. Really great new project. It is a one-man project for the studio material by a guy named James McBain. He's from Scotland, does all the vocals, instruments. Reminds me of a couple of bands, but mostly Motorhead. It's basically like classic Motorhead with some Kill 'Em All era Metallica and Bathory style vocals, all blended together. But most definitely reminds me of Motorhead the most. Check out the song Vampire's Grave. Just total Motorhead worship with a little bit more extreme vocals. They're my favorite new band of anybody. So Hell Ripper, amazing stuff. 2 full-length albums, a couple of EPs. Definitely give them a listen if you like those other bands that I mentioned.
Very cool.
Good name, Hell Ripper.
Hell Ripper.
Yeah, that's a great name. Yeah,
love it. And just so everybody knows, we will be putting everybody's picks in the comments below because I'm sure plenty of people are going to want to investigate some of these bands because, many will be unknown to some. So we will definitely do that. So, Chris.
All right, mine, Pete, is a very similar circumstance to your pick, your last pick, but not a Uriah Heep tribute band. I'm a huge Misfits fan, and in the 90s, there was a Misfits tribute band called Plan 9, which they took the name from, of course, the terrible Ed Wood movie Plan 9 from Outer Space, but Glenn Danzig named his record company Plan 9 Records, and these guys formed this Misfit tribute band in the 90s, and man, they got the look and sound down perfect, and they did so well. You know, they had guys like Hetfield and Kirk Hammett coming to their shows, and you know, they got like I think the quote from Glenn Danzig was like, man, these guys were better than the original Misfits ever were. They started to do originals, and they have a couple albums worth of original material, and they would do like maybe like 1 or 2 Misfits covers per album, or a Sam Hain cover, but the originals are awesome. They are totally in the vein of the Misfits, and like if you played it for somebody, you would totally think that it was totally passable as a you know, 1970s or early 80s Misfits you know, original, like an uncovered original. But no, it's new stuff from this band in California called Plan 9. And I'd love to see these guys, but they never seem to come out on the East Coast, because they're still doing shows out in California. But maybe one day.
You don't like Plan 9 from Outer Space?
Oh, I love it. I mean, I've seen it like probably 10 times, but you know, it's a good bad movie.
It's horrible, yeah. But
I
it's never
cannot
good
sit
fun.
through that. I couldn't get through that and Manos Hand of Fate. I can never sit through those.
Manos is that's worse than Plan 9. At least Plan 9 has Vampira.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, but I can't do it.
Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, and Bella, and also his chiropractor, Ed Wood's chiropractor, right? Because that's where this came in from Dracula, because his Bela Lugosi died
He died right at the beginning of the film of the movie.
beginning of the movie. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Chiropractor.
so good.
Forgot about that.
All right, Rob's final pick is Symphony X, who reminds him a bit of Dream Theater. And I you know, it's an interesting pick, because I think early on, what drew me, myself as well, to Symphony X is because early on they were kind of like a neoclassical version of Dream Theater. They've since really matured and have a sound all their own, where now you have a lot of other prog and power metal bands kind of copying Symphony X. But yeah, early on, I definitely can see that, because that's also why I got into Symphony X right off the bat too, when they first debuted on the scene. So that's a cool pick. And my final pick is a band from Germany. We talked about Primal Fear before. Well, this is a band comprised of a couple of guys from Primal Fear and other bands. The band is Voodoo Circle. So this features Alex Bayrat on guitars from Primal Fear and Silent Force as well. Matt Sinner on bass. And they've had a bunch of different vocalists over the years. David Redman from Pink Cream 69 was their first singer, I believe, on the first album. And then he left for a bunch of years, and now he's back again, I believe, in the band. They singers come and go in this band. But who they remind me of is, it's funny, because even though he's got like the Stratocaster, the white Stratocaster on the front, which would be like, oh, is that like a Blackmore thing? And like, you know, Deep Purple, Rainbow. And they do list, like, for fans of Rainbow. To me, these guys sound exactly like Whitesnake circa 1987 with John Sykes in the band, because Alex's guitar tone, his solos are so much like John Sykes. Big, huge, crunchy riffs, those blazing solos, and the music's got, like, you know, the singing's got like a Coverdale type of thing to it. It's heavy, but it's got that kind of raunch to it, like 80s Whitesnake. And really great band. No matter who's in the band, all the albums kind of have that feel to them. I mean, sometimes the guitar solos sound like they're blatantly ripping off guitar solos from that album, or, you know, slide it in or something like that. But, you know, I'm a big Whitesnake fan, so I love it. So I don't really care. But yeah, Voodoo Circle is, and this is Broken Heart Syndrome, probably still my favorite album from this first one I got, but they're all really good. And they put out another album, I think, about a year and a half ago or something like that. It's sometime in 2020. So they're pretty busy. And they're on AFM Records, who pumps out a ton of shit. So, you know. So there you go. Anybody have any honorable mentions that they didn't get to you want to throw out? Okay.
I do. I want to say Hellhammer and Celtic Frost in particular, they had that thick Sabbath sound, but still sounded like themselves, you know what I mean? And at that time, I was really young and I was thirsting for Sabbath, more like super dense, heavy Sabbath. And I found it with Hellhammer and Celtic Frost. And it was like, wow, somebody, it was refreshing in a way. And I also want to say Early Man sounds a lot like early Metallica sometimes, and I like both of that. And there was a band for a brief time in the early 2000s called Diamond Knights, and they sounded a lot like 80s Judas Priest, like British Steel or something like that. And I really like that too. So those are my honorable mentions.
Cool. Ralph, you got any?
Well, like thinking about all the bands that Sabbath influence, like what comes to mind right off the bat was Candlemass, but also like Count Raven, and there's probably like 100 bands like that you can name.
Oh yeah, Witchfinder General, all kinds.
And I've been saying before about how like certain bands kind of came in and filled a void after another band broke up or somebody died or whatever. And Lamb of God kind of I think sort of stepped in where Pantera kind of like, I think they kind of filled their shoes a little bit,
Yeah, for
just
sure.
like filled that void a little bit. And I think that's why they kind of shot up to being pretty popular pretty quick. But yeah, that I didn't have much time to think. I'm sure there's a shitload more. When I see all the comments, I'll be like, oh yeah, I should have said that.
Exactly. Bryce, you got any?
Yeah, there's two really great new bands, Riot City and Traveler. They both have a great classic sound, similar to like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, just a blend of both of those influences. Also, this band, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Hecate Enthroned or Hecate Enthroned. It's a kind of that like
Hecate Enthroned, but
Yeah,
Hecate Enthroned. Yeah, gothic style melodic black metal from the mid 90s. First two albums sound very similar to the early Cradle of Filth stuff. I was reading up on him. The singer, John Kennedy, was in Cradle of Filth as a bass player before this band. And one thing said that he coached Danny Filth on those like high screeching vocals. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it's just very similar style vocally and musically to Cradle of Filth. And I will also say Racer X and Paul Gilbert sounding similar to Yngwie Malmsteen, the shredding guitar, which I actually probably like Paul Gilbert a little bit better at this point. I sent some of that to Karen, the technical difficulties, because it sounded like a Pink Floyd solo on steroids, which she likes. But yeah. It's like Comfortably Numb, but on steroids.
Too many
that
notes.
one solo.
Editing.
Yeah, he's going. Paul Gilbert though is amazing, but that's pretty much all I got.
I tell you, Riot City, you're hearing them, people talking about them all over the place.
Oh yeah, their new album, Electric Elite, might be my number one album of the year. Just they got a new singer. He had some crazy high notes. The music, like his Judas Priest worship style stuff. So, have you listened to them before? Or?
I had no.
Yeah, I definitely
I need
recommend.
to check them out. I just hear their name popping up all over the place. I'm like, it's one of those bands, there's so many bands out there. I'm like, everybody's talking about this band. I got to go check them out.
They were my number one album of 2019 with Burn the Night. And then this one is probably going to be number one of this year. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Chris, you got any left?
Yeah, just one. I didn't, want to have them as one of my regular picks because I haven't really kept up with them. But years back, I think I looked it up, it was 2003. I was writing for Roadie Crew in South America, and they were like, hey, check out this band. And at the time, I was interviewing tons of bands, and I'm like, dude, I don't know, I don't have time. He's like, the editor's like, trust me, you'll like it. And the band was called Astral Doors, and they were from Sweden. And, he wanted me to check them out because, these guys were like so many other bands. They definitely had that Black Sabbath influence. But to me, they were very much influenced by Tony Martin, Black Sabbath, Tony Martin era Black Sabbath. Headless Cross, Tear, Eternal Idol. And I interviewed them at the time, and they took that as a huge compliment, and they were, big Sabbath fans. And the record that I really liked, I think, was called Of the Father and the Son, which I have somewhere in the garage. And it's like all these priests that have been crucified, like out in the desert. It looks like it should be like a death metal album, but it's total, Tony Martin era Sabbath worship, and I think it's really good. And I kept up with them for another couple records, and then I just kind of fell off. They're still going, but I don't know how any of their more current stuff sounds.
I've heard most of their albums, and I'm trying to remember the singer's name, like Christoph something.
Something, yeah.
He's got his voice. He's, if you like Ronnie James Dio and Tony Martin, put them together, that's what he sounds like.
Yeah,
He's got a really, really strong voice.
I need to hear this. I really.
Tony
the
Martin
Astral Doors
rules.
are really
I gotta
good.
check
They
that
got a
out.
lot of albums too.
Yeah. When I looked them up, I'm like, wow, these guys are still banging records out.
Wow.
Yeah, they were starting to make a name for themselves. They were on Locomotive Records before Locomotive Records went belly up way
Yeah.
back then, and they've gone from label to label since then. I don't even know where they're at now, but
Yeah, not a clue. But
Yeah.
yeah, to me, that was definitely one of those that fit the category for this.
yeah, absolutely. All right, yeah. The only other one I was thinking of right now, and I've talked about them on the channel a bit over the last like week or two, is this band from Germany called Wucan, WCAN. They're terrific, and they've got a female singer who is amazing. She sounds like a cross between Ann Wilson of Heart and Pat Benatar, like the early Pat Benatar stuff, real kick-ass. And the music is this like mix of like early 70s Jethro Tull and early 70s Black Sabbath, big, heavy, doomy riffs, bluesy hard rock riffs, and flute and female vocals. Killer.
I love that.
Yeah. Chris, you would love these guys.
No, I've definitely heard them. They are very cool.
Yeah, really, really cool band. They just released a new album this year, and they have 2 other albums that are very, very cool. And they usually 1 or 2 of the songs on each album they sing in German, but all the rest is they sing in American. And she's just got a great presence on stage. I've seen video clips of them on YouTube, and the music's just really good. It's heavy, it's kind of bluesy. And like I said, if you love like, Benefit or Aqualung era Jethro Tull and like the first 3 or 4 Sabbath albums, you've come to the right place with
I need to hear
a
this
cool
band.
female singer. Yeah, really good, Karen. Really
That
good.
sounds like I would like it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
curious,
very
Chris,
cool.
what do you think about Church of Misery?
I like them. I mean, I think they're very cool. Sometimes I think it's a little too drony for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little too much feedback, I guess. But I think they're cool. I think any band that takes a huge Sabbath influence, I think is awesome. And I mean, God, we could have done a whole episode on just bands. We didn't even touch on Trouble and Typo Negative. I mean, all the big ones. There's so many. But yeah, I think they're a cool band.
Okay, because sometimes when I see that, to me, it's ripping them off, that those images and the puns on the names. And Brian Jonestown Massacre obviously is big on that stuff too. I don't know, but for them, for whatever reason, I give them a pass. I really like them, and I don't know.
The thing I think is a little weird, right, is when Church of Misery uses the devil logo from Sabbath. I'm like, all right, dude, that's getting a little weird.
Yeah.
Like this would be like if somebody took Eddie and started putting it on their record.
Right.
All right, guys, you're getting a little too
much. Yeah. I hear that. Yeah. So I don't know. I think Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats is guilty of that. Maybe not with Sabbath, but they're not very original as far as images and logos and things.
No, but yeah, and I think Uncle Acid too. I like them as well. I think they obviously borrow a ton from Sabbath, but they've got this kind of whimsical, like Beatles and the Move type of 60s thing going on with their music as well.
And
So
very cult movie.
and there's some obvious ones we didn't mention, right? We didn't mention Ghost, who obviously sound a lot like Merciful Fate meets Blue Oyster Cult. We didn't talk about Greta Van Fleet, who obviously sound like Zeppelin. There's tons of other ones. There's bands that sound like the Stones, Thin Lizzy, Deep Purple, Aerosmith. I mean, there's so many other bands. But like the Black Crowes kind of take cues from the Faces and the Stones, right? There's so many cool bands that have come out over the years that obviously were heavily influenced by another bigger band and kind of forged their own paths. So what's cool today is we talked a lot about like some kind of cool unknown bands, which is kind of neat, I think.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I was going to say that there's a whole subgenre of punk that's just MC5 and Stooges worship. It's just based on those 2 bands, and it's kind of ridiculous, but it's also really fun too. So I mean, like it's weird how 1 or 2 bands can just carry so much weight, and we still feel those influences. reaching that far back. So
Well, I mean, you think about it, the MC5, the Stooges, and the New York Dolls, right, were
yeah,
groundbreaking bands who we now look at and say, oh, those are kind of some of the first punk bands, but nobody was saying punk back then. Just like nobody
No.
was saying metal back then, right? Until like really
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's true.
other than in the Steppenwolf song "Born to Be Wild," did you hear the heavy metal thunder being uttered? But nobody was calling bands heavy metal bands.
No. Mm-mm.
69, 70, 71, 72, 73. So,
Right on. Yeah.
so.
No, no, no.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Some bands that sound like this, right? So in the comments below, we're going to get a lot of comments on this episode, I'm sure. List some bands that you really like that sound or remind you of another band, a more notable band that you love a lot. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of, like Ralph said, there's going to be lots of people chiming in, and we're going to be like, how did we forget that one? So, but that's the cool thing about an episode like this. So, put them down in the comments, and stay tuned. We got a really cool show coming up next week. So this was an idea that Chris passed on to me that we're also going to do, I believe, on In the Prague Seat, if not next week, the week after. So basically, it's going to be kind of like a game show type of thing. Well, not so much a game show, but it's going to be a contest. So everybody on the panel is going to put together a list of 10 bands, 9 of whom they've seen live in concert before. One of them, however, they have not. So in each person's turn, they're going to name their 10 bands. Everybody else on the panel is going to write down which is the band they believe that person is lying about and never saw. And then at the end, we're going to add up. Everybody's going to write down their picks. And then at the end, we're going to go one by one. Everybody's going to list the band that they never saw that they were lying about. And whoever gets it right gets a point. Okay, and then at the end we'll add up the totals and see who was the best guesser, or who knows their fellow panelists the most and can tell when someone's lying about a band they've seen. So,
We're never going to figure out Ryan and Nick. There's no way we're going to be able to tell. who they
because they're going to name the
Every
10 most
challenge.
obscure bands ever, and we're going to be like, I never heard of any of them, so I just picked one, right?
That's true.
I saw him in the basement. Rah, rah, Scout. That's Keeler yelling at Scout.
That's my favorite story. The basement of the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've all seen some bands in some interesting places, right? But
Yes.
in the basement of a Chinese restaurant, I don't think I can tell.
Hey, maybe that's a future episode. Top 3 weirdest places we've seen bands.
Okay, I can definitely come up with 3, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, easy.
So that might be a future topic for a future episode. So yeah, stay tuned next week for guess the band that we each have not seen. So I'm going to be asking everybody to come up with that list, and we'll see how it goes. So that'll be next week. So stay tuned for that, and visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together. All the damn time.
The damn time.
That's right. For Bryce and Ralph and Chris and Karen, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you next Monday on Hudson Valley Squares. Stay tuned tomorrow for In the Prague Seat. Till then,
Right.
have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.